Hello again. This is Dick Fleming, member of First Force Recon during 67-68. This video is a continuation of the one I did from this location a few minutes ago. The last one ended with my team and I waiting to meet up with a grunt company that was going to position themselves to attack these base camps that are at either end of the telecommunications line that we had found. So we were waiting overnight in a secure location, well camouflaged, and even dug in. And in the morning, very early in the morning, we got our gear together and we moved out. Very carefully moving down the trail to a rendezvous point with a grunt company. And we always moved very quietly, and we used hand signals. This meant as a VC, we could see the VC, or North Vietnamese. This meant hold up. This meant drop to the ground. We had a whole bunch of these things, but those are the primary hand signals. But what we didn't do is we never talked during the or yelled unless we were in contact and terrified out of our wits. But normally we were very quiet. We moved stealthily through the jungle, and our objective was to remain unseen. If our mission had been, if we had been found, the mission would have been compromised. So we moved very slowly, carefully, quietly, observing all around us, looking left to right, and moving our weapons to cover the area around us. But in this case, we heard the grunt company approaching from, I don't know, half a mile or so, a quarter of a mile. Those guys were yucking it up. They were talking and laughing and cursing and smoking. We could smell the cigarette smoke coming up. And when we stepped out of the brush and appeared suddenly with our camouflage faces and our bush hats, and just appeared in their midst, they were really shocked. Where the hell did you guys come from? And we had told them they were approaching us. We were told not to shoot. Told them not to shoot from the radio. We had been in contact with them. My primary fear is that they were going to see movement in the jungle around them and open up on us. But they didn't. In fact, they didn't even have the chance to. We appeared from both sides and joined their company as they were moving along the trail. So we proceeded with them, and we came up to the telecommunications line where we had contact the previous day, and they sent out two platoons, one on either side of the trail, and they moved up toward a small rocky knoll. And as they did so, we could hear a machine gun opening up, and we knew that they had been in serious contact. So those first platoons moved back and set up a defensive perimeter. And these guys were equipped. They had mortars. They had their flak jacket and their helmets on. They had M60s and M79 grenade launchers. They knew what they were doing. In my book, I call them troglodytes. And they seemed to have like a bring it on attitude. At least it seemed that way to me. It looked like somebody you really didn't. Those guys looked like somebody you really didn't want to mess with. So they set up a defensive perimeter, and they had a captain with them, and he was on the phone with his command center, and our lieutenant was cheek and jowl with him, talking. I don't know what about. We were just mingled in with the rest of the unit there, and on alert, but not particularly. We knew that we were probably not going to be involved with a direct assault. So in our case, we were mainly a supporting force. So the the commander said he was going to attack the machine gun nest, and which was on a hill overlooking the trail. And that's what they did. So these guys got together, and they moved out in these combat formations that I had forgotten about since advanced infantry training or basic training. You know, they were moving in a hopscotch pattern, one after another, and you know, they looked very, very professional as they moved forward. But when they got to the base of the hill, the underbrush was so thick there, and they were climbing. They would need to climb toward it, that they couldn't really see what they were shooting at or even firing at. And now it started to rain, and the clouds came down, and it was pouring rain. And we knew that we couldn't get any they wouldn't be able to get any air support from that. And apparently they were too far away to get artillery support as well. There weren't any fire bases within range. I mean, we normally went way out. You know, Force Recon started 20 miles out usually. Recon Battalion went up to 20 miles. Force Recon took over from that and went 20 miles or further. So we were pretty well at the limit of support. What the Grunt Company was doing that far out, I don't know. Maybe they didn't know either. But here we were in the mess together. So they started to attack that hill, and man, what a fight went on. I mean, I hadn't never experienced that before. We were in a small firefight, small arms firefight that lasted for maybe 5 or 10 minutes before we managed to extract ourselves and get the hell out of there. But this went on and on and on, and these guys were firing mortars, and they were firing machine guns, and they were moving slowly up the hill toward the crest of that hill. So we hunkered down, and the lieutenant said that he had volunteered for us to set up a defensive perimeter at one end of the trail, and he asked me to go down to be the point man to go down the trail and set up some claymores. You know, we had our claymores. We usually sawed them in half, cut them in half with a knife. So instead of having one claymore, we had two. Each claymore had two igniters on them, two blasting caps. So we could cut them in half and weighed half as much, and they worked just as well. So I moved down the trail, and that was moving away from where the firing was. And as I went around the side of the hill, boy, it got awfully quiet. And the crazy thought went through my head, Dick, maybe you should just keep right on walking. Just walk right the hell out of this war. But of course I didn't. I put in the claymores. The other guys joined me from behind, and they were the reason I think I didn't move, because I couldn't desert them. But the thought did go through my mind for a minute. So we set up our claymores and on long wires, and then we joined the rest of the group, and that was rough, because as we moved closer to the other guys, we could see that they had already taken casualties, and they had placed their bodies that came back out of that initial assault. They had dragged them out of their places where they had been hit, and they had laid them on the ground where my doc from our team and another medic, Navy medic, were working on the wounded. And that was the first time I ever saw men being laid out like that, like cordwood, one right next to the other, and they still had their gear on, and I don't know. It's a sad situation, the breeze was going through their hair and ruffling their hair, but their eyes were open and the insects were on their body and attracted by the blood. So it was tough. It was tough to see that, and what can you do? War is war. But they must have, toward the end of the day, they must have had 12 guys laid out there on the ground, and no way to get them out, even the wounded. So we were tasked with the objective to blast a firing zone, blast a landing zone on the hillside where a chopper could get in, resupply us with ammunition and food, and to get the wounded out. So we went down to where there was a flat spot off the side of the hill, and we wrapped these trees that were standing in the LZ with det cord and blocks of C4, and we used to do that all the time to create a landing zone for ourselves. But this terrain was these trees were too thick. We managed to, when we blasted them, we managed to get a few down, but we couldn't get them all down. So we called in for some more C4 to be dropped to us, and one of the pilots says, "I've got a whole pallet of C4." A whole pallet, I don't know, 2,000 pounds of C4. And Truman's eyes lit up when he heard that. Well, they dropped this pallet down, and we proceeded to wrap the C4 around these other trees, and with Truman and myself doing the work. And for every pound of C4 that I used, he probably used 5 pounds. And when we lit off the igniter to blow the area, my igniter wouldn't go off, and I told him, just wait a second, don't fire yours off yet. Which of course he did. He immediately pulled it, and now we had to both get the heck out of there, and we walked. You're not supposed to run away from an explosion like that. We're supposed to walk and then get down behind cover. So we walked as fast as we could, and we got down, and as soon as we did, it seemed like the entire hillside exploded. If my C4 had gone off with his, we would have probably killed ourselves. But in any case, the trees went everywhere, and they splintered, and we cleared an area that probably 4 helicopters could have come in. And at least one did, unfortunately, and landed. It was actually a Huey, and it came in and took off the wounded, and made a number of passes there. Landed right on top of all these logs and everything that we had blown. So that was another fortunate thing that I didn't that my igniter hadn't gone off the way that it should have. So that night we spent with the Grunts, where we dug foxholes and trenches, and the Grunts immediately felt at home. They had brought out their sea rations. They had lit small fires and were cooking meals. They looked like that was the most normal thing in the world. They had ponchos over the trenches because of the rain. They made themselves right at home. We had never done anything like that. We always ate our rations cold, and we very quietly opened the cans. Never had fires. These guys didn't care. They felt that they were well protected behind their trench line, and they were just right at home. So that was where we spent the night. And after dinner, they take their cans. These guys, they throw them down the hill. And of course, we would never do that either. We'd either bury the cans, or in most cases, we just packed them out, you know, put them in our backpack and take them out. Sometimes we buried them, but we never just threw them down the hill. Well, that night when we tried to go to sleep, the rats came out, and you could hear them down the hill fighting among themselves for the beanies and weenies, the best beanie and weenie or whatever these guys had thrown down the hill. And when we tried to go to sleep, you could feel these rats coming up toward us, and they pulling at the rain, you know, at our feet or the rain gear that we had on. We didn't not rain gear really. It was just a silk blanket that we used, that we covered ourselves with. We never used ponchos in the bush either, because it made too much noise. We had like a camouflage silk blanket that we laid down and wrapped ourselves in. It was completely silent. It wasn't waterproof, but it was made out of silk. It dried quite easily. The Marine Corps never gave us that. We had to go to the I'll call them the gooks in Da Nang and buy it ourselves, you know. But anyway, I swear to God, if the Marine Corps they would have charged us for our bullets if they had their way. Well, anyway, so that was the way we spent the night, you know, fighting off the rats as they came up the hill toward us and looking for food. And the next day, I'll continue my story.